There's a major G20 summit coming up, right? But instead of the usual diplomatic run-up, the sources we've looked at are pointing towards, well, potential chaos.
Yeah, it's quite something.
Because you have a former U.S. president, Donald Trump, basically challenging the host country's right to even be there. We're talking about South Africa. And he's threatening a boycott.
A full boycott.
So our mission in this deep dive is pretty clear. We need to unpack these statements he's made about South Africa's G20 membership.
Right.
Because this isn't just, political noise. It really forces us, and you listening, to think about the high stakes here for global economic governance.
Right.
For stability itself.
It's a really remarkable situation, mostly because of the timing, like you said.
Yeah.
South Africa is the G20 president for this cycle, 2024-2025.
Okay.
And they're gearing up to host the summit in Johannesburg. That's set for November 22nd and 23rd, 2025.
Right, next year.
And this meeting is, it's monumental. It is the very first time the G20 summit will be held on African soil.
First time ever. Wow.
Exactly.
Yep.
So for this challenge from the U.S., potentially from a future U.S. administration, to come now, it's just highly unusual and potentially devastating for the host's agenda.
Okay, let's zoom in then on the specific challenge itself. The sources we have lay out the public statements pretty starkly. Trump apparently said, point blank, that South Africa shouldn't even be in the Gs anymore, meaning the G20.
Yeah, direct quote.
And announced he absolutely will not attend the summit if he's reelected. Full stop.
No ambiguity there.
And he gave reasons, right, specific reasons for taking such a hard line. It seems to center on his view that South Africa's domestic policies and its foreign policy direction are just fundamentally bad. That's the word.
Yeah, very broad.
And he listed several things. Sharp criticism of their land reform policies.
That's a big one.
Specific focus on claims about violence, especially targeting white farmers.
Right, that narrative has been around.
And generally framing South Africa as having kind of lost its legitimacy among the major global economies.
And what's really interesting here when you look at the sources is that this isn't coming out of nowhere.
Okay.
This public challenge, it kind of leverages and frankly escalates existing friction points in the U.S.-South Africa relationship.
So there's history here.
Absolutely. For years, there have been these underlying tensions, things involving trade, disagreements over policy like land reform, these controversies around claims of violence.
Right.
And the whole, very charged issue of land redistribution. So the sources suggest this comment isn't just a comment. It's a political escalation.
Turning a simmer into a boil, basically.
Pretty much. Turning a long, simmering diplomatic strain into a potential institutional crisis for the G20.
Okay, let's connect this to the G20 structure itself, because that seems to be where the crisis really deepens.
Exactly.
The G20, it's the main forum for the big economies, right? Advanced ones, major emerging ones.
Yeah, it's supposed to represent something like 80% of global GDP. It's the key table for economic coordination.
And South Africa's position in that group, it carries huge symbolic weight. That seems key here.
Absolutely key.
It is currently the only African country in the G20.
The only one. So its inclusion isn't just about, South African domestic policy. It's meant to provide representation for the entire continent, at least in theory, at the highest levels of financial and economic decision-making.
So undermining South Africa is, in a way, undermining Africa's voice in the G20.
Precisely. And for South Africa itself, hosting this summit is a massive diplomatic platform. Huge.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's their chance to shape the global agenda, to push priorities that are critical not just for them, but for the whole African continent.
Like what sort of priorities?
Oh, things like climate financing, reforms to multilateral institutions, tackling debt restructuring. These are big ticket items for Africa.
Okay.
So a U.S. boycott, it doesn't just, reduce the guest list by one, it dramatically weakens the optics of the summit.
Right, makes it look less legitimate, maybe.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. And it definitely reduces South Africa's international leverage at the very moment they need maximum global support to push their agenda.
And what about the U.S. side? What does this signal from their perspective?
Well, if this stance holds, it signals a potentially major shift in U.S. foreign policy, a much more confrontational posture.
Towards whom? Just South Africa?
Towards any country, really, that's perceived to be deviating from what the U.S. sees as preferred norms.
So using participation in these global bodies as a kind of political weapon.
It seems that way, whether it's critiques about land reform, how minorities are treated, or who countries align with internationally. It suggests a readiness to challenge membership or participation based on those factors.
Which really brings us to the core question, the one you listening should probably focus on. If a leading member like the U.S. tries to push out the host, on what basis do we actually include or exclude countries from these vital global economic forums? What are the rules of the club? Are there any?
That's the million